sometimes doesn't work very well.
It's sad. We really shouldn't be saturating 15 up.
Okay, we're 7:01. Let's start streaming.
All right.
Well, good evening to everybody that is in our stream tonight. We got Minnesota Maker, we got D Park 88, Eric, Julie, Hoppy Naki. I hope I said that right. Hoppy Naki from New Zealand.
I think you got it right this time.
HVAC A to Z. Hello, sir. Minnesota Maker. There we go. Good evening, all. John Mack. How are you, sir? We're going to say hello, our hellos. Tonight, I don't have my lapel mic on because the battery died, so I'm using my old-fashioned
Hooray.
mic. So we can do that fine radio voice. No,
only tonight. No.
We'll do that really sexy, low-tone voice.
Good night.
Hey, there's Robert.
This is how it's going to go.
Art. And who else did I miss? I didn't miss anybody. So, hey, welcome to The First Layer. This is a show that explores the world of 3D printing. This is our live stream, our Saturday night live stream. I'm with my good friend, Brian Baker.
Hey, Rich. How's it going, buddy?
It is Saturday. It is actually nice outside today.
It is. I was almost able to have the window open. I washed my car for the first time in like a month.
Really? Wow. I haven't done anything with our vehicles yet, so fingers crossed I'll do that this week.
No snow, no snow, no snow, no snow.
We got Diecast and 3D Printing Guy. What's up? What's up to everybody in our chat this evening? I want to remind you that we've got Super Chat turned on tonight, so if you feel like you want to drop us some coffee money or some libation money, you can do that.
Or if you have that pressing question that just can't wait 30 seconds for us to answer it, we'll mic drop. We'll
what else do we got going on tonight? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about finishing prints. Brian is kind of a newbie at finishing prints. He doesn't finish his prints so much, so he wants.
I don't even finish printing them in the case of my my dual color benchy that's offset. So
there you go. So we're going to talk a little bit about what I use to finish prints tonight, and maybe I can give you guys some tips. If you've got any questions about it, don't be afraid to ask me, and I will be happy to answer your questions. We will talk a little bit about XTC because I know there's going to be a lot of questions about XTC. Why do I not use it and that kind of stuff. So
I like my XTC.
And if you've been following us on Facebook, I've been painting a lot. Let's run that intro, shall we? Hey, welcome to the show once again. Here is me and Brian. Yeah, let's get us back there. There we go.
Hey!
We're back.
Yay!
Evening 3D Medic Vince. David Sell all the way from Minnesota. There we go. And we got Snapshot FPV, Wiley's 3D. Hello. Wiley, weren't you streaming cat births recently or kitten births? I'm sure you were.
I think it's just the actual kitchen. I'm pretty sure he didn't live stream the birth. Otherwise,
okay.
Yeah. That wouldn't be fun. But hopefully the kittens are doing well.
Hopefully they are. Hopefully they are. Yeah. They all came out okay. Let's hope. Right there with you, Rob, although I have given a couple of pieces of abbreviated sanding after taking off supports. Okay, so we're talking a little bit about finishing your prints. There's Leia right there. I've been working on her. I've also been working on Luke and Han. So there's Luke. We're getting closer to finishing up Luke.
I like Demon Luke. Let's leave him the way he is.
Let's leave him the way he is, Demon Luke.
Look at those soulless eyes. It's great.
And we've got Han right there. So I get a lot of questions as to what do I use to finish prints? How do I go about finishing prints? Do I sand them? Do I put XTC on them? What do I do to get them to a state where I can paint them? So first and foremost, and I'm dropping things on the floor in front of me, let's talk about sandpaper. Because I use sandpaper, I wet sand first and foremost, and when a print comes off the printer bed, if I'm going to paint it, I will hit it with a 120 grit sandpaper, a wet dry sandpaper, just to kind of knock down anything that's a little high that shouldn't be there. Maybe an aberration in a line or a layer line or something along that line. But because I print pretty fine, I don't have to do a lot of sanding anymore. We'll talk a little bit about that. Then I hit it with filler primer, and the filler primer that I use is this good stuff right here. Rust-Oleum primer. You can buy this at Home Depot. It is a high build formula. I usually will hit it 3 or 4 times with this stuff between sandings. Let's have a look. Brian, you're going to have to relay questions to me.
Yeah, no, everyone's just talking about the terrible weather, and I'm just been like, ha ha ha, ha, we're getting our warm up. I can't be very sympathetic. Today was the first day in almost a month that we hit positive Celsius, so above 32 for you American friends. It's been a wild month. So have you been you've been primarily painting indoors, right, Richard? You don't even try to paint outdoors.
No, I don't anymore. Not in this weather.
It was great in the summer. We could go out back, spool 3D, and just prime out in the open. And now it's like,
now you can't.
It's terrible.
What I've done at home is I've set up my paint booth behind me that you guys can see there. And I've got it filtering into a filter and carbon activated bucket. So yes, it still does smell. It doesn't smell nearly as bad because that charcoal is grabbing a lot of that heavy odor. So it doesn't smell for a long period of time. But that being said, I do use this stuff. I probably do about 3 coats with this before I'm into my final prime. And what I use for final primer is, again, another Rust-Oleum product called 2x Ultra Cover Gray. That's it. When I do this primer right here, this is the last priming stage before I go into painting.
So is there a reason why you particularly use gray, or?
I use gray so I can see any flaws, because gray will show flaws in a print or in a paint job or in a fill job better than any other color out there. I find that gray just offsets it, and most artists today use gray as well, just because they want to be able to see that end result. I want to kind of get there before the end. Now, some of the other stuff that I use, once I've done priming, I'll usually leave that for a day or 2 to dry. So the primer has a time to off gas and really harden on the print before I start putting any color on it.
So what kind of time are you putting in between those layers, like between those initial priming layers? Because I know what a lot of the stuff says, like a day to cure or something like that.
Usually I go about 24 to 36 hours between sprayings. And then, of course, I get into laying down my base colors. And we can see with Leia here that we've got, let me just switch cameras here. I'm just going to go to my overhead. There we go. So I've got the overhead going, and you can see here, oh, no, you can't. You can only see her boobs. You can see that the color looks even on camera, which is really weird because when you look at her in person, you can see dark shadows in here. You can see shadows here, down in her breast, underneath her cheeks, underneath her nose, the ab line. You can see there's a little bit of discoloration there. And that's because I use a, let me go back to this camera. Oh, looks like we're jumping back and forth here. There we go.
We're good. We're good.
We're good. All right, so that is why, or pardon me, what I'll do after I've done the priming is I will mix up some of my own base flesh. And people will ask me all the time, well, where do you get that flesh color? Well, it's made from 3 colors, actually. And I'm going to pull them out right now. That's red oxide. That's not the one we want. There we go. So when I am going to make up a batch of base flesh, I use these 3 colors. And I'll kind of bring them up here. I will start with burnt sienna. You can see that these are Liquitex Basics acrylic paints in a tube. These are about $5 a piece.
That's a lot of paint, so don't think it's, going to be wasted.
People are saying I'm a little harder to hear. How's that? Is that better?
Oh, that's nice and bright. Yeah, I wasn't sure until we blasted the opening. And I'm like, whoa! So
then I will use raw sienna, and then I will use some titanium white. And the reason I use Liquitex Basics is because you can get a lot of paint for little money. Now, with a basic group of colors, you'll want your basic red, your basic yellow, and your basic blue. And these are all primary colors. So the red, the blue, the yellow. With those 3 colors, you can mix pretty much any shade of color that you want. Get yourself a color wheel, which mine is at the shop. Then I'll grab some gray.
Yeah.
Then some black. I'll just go through these last 3 here. I usually grab some raw umber and some burnt umber as well. And then finally some red oxide. So you were going to say, Brian?
Yeah, I was going to say one thing, because we covered a bit of the colors last week, but maybe you can walk us through a little bit of a demo of how you mix your colors. I know you have your color wheels and all that, but a lot of us would probably just mix on a little palette and have a one-time use small amount. But you're making a pretty decent quantity of these common mixed colors. So are you going and are you just making a large batch the first time, or are you jotting down your quantities, your ratios? Maybe give us a little insight into that.
Yeah, so when it comes to my base flesh color, this is base Caucasian flesh, as you can tell. Because it is very kind of pinky and yellow. This is made up of basically 20 grams of raw sienna, 20 grams of burnt sienna, and about 30 grams of white. So a little bit more white just to give it a little bit more of a brighter color. Then I will mix in with this, where is it right here, some X20A Tamiya acrylic thinner. And that gives me a nice consistency. You can buy these Tamiya jars at any hobby shop. I like these jars because they seal really well. These jars here, which I have mixed paint in already, and I've just thinned these. These jars from Michaels aren't great. They don't seal real well, but these are awesome. Now, when you make up a big batch like this, you can buy empty bottles. This is kind of a cool thing. I'm going to show you this. I know I'm off the mic here a little bit.
No, you're still good. I was just more amazed that because I went up to the hobby shop and I saw how much they were charging for those little mixing containers, and it made me sick. So,
well, I got this big bag off of Amazon for like really, really cheap.
So there's the key. You gotta buy it online.
That's right. You got to buy it online. I don't have a link.
Julie's asking. Yeah, Julie's asking. The acrylic thinner makes a big difference from thinning with pure water.
Yes.
So pure water, because the acrylic thinner, isn't it actually a bit of a paint stripper? It almost it helps dissolve it a little bit more.
There's flammable contents in it. Now you can make your own thinner. And if anybody's got a pen or a pencil out there, I'm going to tell you how to make your own thinner right now. There's going to be 2 expensive items you're going to need to make your own thinner, but there's going to be 2 really cheap items you're going to need. First, we're going to start with this.
Okay, I'm bankrupt. I'm done.
So distilled water's like $2 for a big 4-liter.
Now, make sure which distilled water it is, right? Because a lot of the stuff I've looked at lately actually has quite high mineral count. So
this is 0. This is the Equate stuff. It's 0 mineral count.
I'm just saying not all distilled waters are the same, just from
Exactly,
experience lately.
Yeah.
So read the bottle.
Now, the other thing that I put in is isopropyl alcohol. Can you tell I shop at Walmart a lot?
Yeah, you know what I like? I like that they finally put the 91% out on the shelf instead of having to ask at the pharmacy.
Yes. Now,
Yeah, that's a nice change.
those 2 bottles will make you a lot of airbrush thinner. And you're going to mix those 50-50. So 50% water, 50% alcohol. Then what you're going to do, depending on the size of bottle that you're using, if you're using a bottle this size, like I have here for the airbrush cleaner, and I make my own of that too, by the way. What you want to put into, these are your 2 most expensive additives, and one is called Acrylic Flow by Golden, and the other one is Retarder. So what this does is this is like almost like soap. A couple of drops of this. Let's say if you're doing a jar that size that I just showed you, you will put in about 5 drops of this and 5 drops of the retarder. Now what the retarder does is it keeps the paint from drying up too quickly. So it'll give you a lot more working time. Now you can use that to thin out any acrylic paint. The reason I don't use straight water is because straight water sucks, in all honesty. You never know what kind of water you're going to have. You could have hard water and it can affect your paint. So what I will do sometimes is I will take these little bottles, which are very similar to these little bottles of Vallejo. Now I use a lot of Vallejo paint. I will fill this up with my acrylic mix, and I will also put in a little BB, like one of these stainless steel ball bearings, to help me when I'm agitating the bottle. So it keeps,
I've never thought of that. That's brilliant.
It keeps the material mixed really well.
Does it not act like a check valve there when you go like spray it, or
nope, because if it's thin enough, it will go around.
Oh, okay.
Like you can hear in this, in this one right here, you should be able to hear.
No, I just saw it in the eye drop bottle, so I assumed you were going to dispense it with it in there. You know, the ball bearing will go and jam up against the nozzle. So I was just curious if. It can come down into that area right there, but it's still, if you look inside the cap, you can see that there's still a lot of room in there. It also sounds like a 3D printable solution, actually.
It kind of is. Kind of is. And then I will use pipettes, which again you can get on eBay or Amazon, to transfer paints from larger bottles into something like this. Because to be honest with you, trying to do this without a pipette is like trying to, pour a glass of water into a thimble. So now as far as brushes go, and brush care is something that's very important to me as well. What's the difference? Oh, let's talk about some of these questions here real quick. Let's answer some of these questions. Yeah, if you want
to bounce aside there, Steve Dillon has a great question. All the primers we mentioned, can they be used on PLA, ABS, PETG, etc.?
Absolutely, they can. All of the models that I print for show or for sale, or just to give away, they're all PLA, and all that works just fine on them. What else have we got here?
Jim's Garage is debating whether or not to buy an Ender 3 used on eBay, and so everyone's just discussing the differences between it. I mean, I basically I already said it in the chat, but if you really are willing to kind of work on it, because you never know what people have done to some of these 3D printers, then $150 is a darn good bargain. Even the US, bear in mind, you know. So
I agree.
if you don't mind working on it, hey, that's a bargain. See, we can't get deals like that in Canada because shipping's so high that you'd never recoup the cost. So
Yeah, exactly. Here, let's just move that camera out of the way.
does the build tack last? Yeah, build tack can last a fairly long time. If it's just, you know, make sure it lasts as long as you don't drill into the bed. And
Yeah.
I don't have it in the room right now, but get some good cleaning isopropyl alcohol. Even the 70% stuff is probably fine just to wipe down the bed, because the number one thing that will stop bed adhesion on the build tack is oils, especially from fingers.
Yep. I agree.
All right.
Any affordable paint gun kit you recommend? RT is asking. Well, if you're
go ahead.
If you're new to airbrushing, and I'm thinking that's what he's getting at is airbrushing. If you're new to airbrushing, yes, there is an affordable one that you can get. There's a place in Canada called Princess Auto. In the States, I think it's called Hobby Freight. And what you can do is go in there, and they have a paint spray, like a hobbyist spray gun. Looks like an airbrush. It's really a knockoff of a Badger 300 airbrush, and Badger is a great brand. You can pick that up for $15 with a hose and extra cups. Now, that is what we call a siphon feed. So what it does, unlike my airbrush, let me see if I can pull mine over here. Mine is a gravity-fed airbrush. So I put paint in the cup, and it siphons down and out the end of the nozzle. Now, with a siphon fed, the bottle, it's a bottle that usually sits below the gun. And when you depress the trigger, it starts your air and your paint flowing at the same time. It's usually a single action. This is a double action. So with a double action, you push down for air and you pull back for paint. It looks like I have to clean my airbrush a little bit.
Given that I'm the bastard child of the family here, I'm sure I can eventually show it. But this Go Cheer on Amazon, if you guys want a really good introductory one, this one was surprisingly good, given that it came with everything. So I'll see if I can mouse over it and give you the... It is a dual action. It's gravity, just the same as Richard's. But... you know, comes with its own little portable compressor and everything. And honestly, mine was fine. So, well, you know, $85 Canadian for an all-in-one kit to start with. It's easy enough for you to screw up and return to Amazon at least. But I kept mine. So,
now, what magnetic bed y'all recommend? And that is coming from Johnny Gardner. None. If I were going to do any kind of magnetic bed, I would certainly go ahead and utilize the Build-Tac magnetic system. I find that to be better. The flex plate system is probably one of the best on the market, but you are going to pay for that price difference.
You know, if your printer comes with one, it's not bad either. Honestly, the one on the Ender 3 is not that, or Ender 3 Pro is not that bad, I found.
Yeah, when it gets up to about 85 degrees, it starts to lose its magnetic properties, but you know, for all intent and purposes, it's a pretty good bed.
Yeah, I don't ever take mine above 60, so I can't speak for that. But yeah, magnetics change their properties above 60, 70 degrees, and honestly, and as you'll see in the coming weeks, as we're playing around with different bed adhesion items, you don't need a flex bed to remove a lot of things quite easily. There are some practically swing your arm and it falls right off options out there.
Another question that we've got here is there any way to get better adhesion on the Ender 3 while printing with ABS? Yes, stop printing with ABS.
Jeez, you are just you're a
Well,
treasure tonight, aren't you? I
the
mean,
Ender,
yeah,
well,
you're
the
right.
Ender
You're not
3
wrong.
is not made to print ABS. Because it's an open air printer, it was a printer that was designed out of the box to only print PLA. Now you can print PETG with it when you move up to a higher end hot end, but as far as printing ABS, you really need to have an enclosure, and that enclosure needs to be somewhat temperature regulated. Whether that means that you've got it enclosed on all sides with acrylic or something along that line. But you don't want to leave your Ender 3 in that environment for too very long, because eventually that heat is going to start to affect the electronics.
So one solution I've been seeing, I think it's implemented in Cura at this point, is there's a feature you can turn on that actually 3D prints a wall around the outside of your print to maintain an internal temperature. It's a really odd concept, and I want to definitely try it out at some point. I personally don't print ABS because it stinks.
Yeah,
honestly.
that too.
The smell is terrible, so if you can
Now,
overcome that, try anything.
A good alternative, of course, is PETG, which you really need to, you really get the properties of both ABS and PLA, the strength and the durability of ABS, the no smell and the ease of print like PLA. Although it's not environmentally friendly because it doesn't break down in a landfill like PLA does, but it is a good alternative to ABS prints.
It's incredibly strong, actually, but you know, the latest numbers I've been seeing from a lot of OEMs are suggesting the newer PLAs are actually coming in stronger than PETG.
That's what I've heard too. Some of the stronger PLAs, the tough ones.
Yeah, the tough PLA brands. Because I was looking at some charts. I wanted to print some very, very mechanically strong parts, and I was looking at, you know, HT PLA and all these different materials. And basically, before you get to nylon, PLA still kind of reigns for the strongest material. It's just, it has that bad temperature tolerance. So
now Eric Widemark says ABS plus acetone mixed on the bed. Yes, that will work, but I wouldn't start putting acetone onto my removable surface because acetone will start to eat into that build-tack surface over time and really cause a big mess. So
yeah,
if you are going to do that,
substance.
if you are going to do that, make sure that you have a glass bed.
Plus, I think we saw earlier this year that some countries are banning acetone. So
yes, that's what I've heard too.
You know, that's not generally a good sign for the for if it's good for the environment or not.
Well, acetone's been around for years, so.
So what do you think about PEI sheets? Because I know we really haven't talked about those a lot yet.
I think PEI sheets are great for certain things. PEI, much like glass in a lot of ways, will not accept PETG on its own. Let me clarify that statement. When you are printing with PETG on glass or on PETG, or on PEI, I'm sorry, you still need an interference layer because it will ruin your PETG because it'll grab on just like it does to glass. And like glass will have, you'll tear out chunks of your glass. You can do the same thing to your PEI, and you really need an interference layer. So as an interference layer, you want to put on a little bit of a glue stick. That'll work. But I wouldn't do PETG on PEI as just straight material to material. That's been my experience with it.
Yeah, I've been trying to read a bit into it just for curiosity because me and PETG, it's just a fight, it seems. It never likes to stick to any material I set it up for, and doesn't flow the same way. It almost needs like a coarse surface basically to bind to. So I was just curious, you know, I've been thinking about doing PEIs on some of my printers, but so you would say keep it on the lower temperature stuff then, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you can print ABS onto PETG with no issues.
right? Because
Now,
we get a lot of questions about build plates and stuff.
yeah,
Not
we
a lot of
do.
people are using build tack anymore. I don't think. I
You'd
think
be
it's just kind of.
surprised. No,
Oh,
there's a lot of
really?
people using BuildTak. Now, BuildTak has also put out their own version of PEI as well as an alternative to their black build plates.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And if you're
Hmm.
interested to see what they look like, just come by Spool 3D. We've got some over there. Wayne Duvall is the Amazon Basics
He's
PETG
just
any
asking.
good? Don't know. I've never used it. We test from time to time different filaments on the show, but we haven't had any of the Amazon Basics yet.
I know
Somebody
I've
who's maybe used
used.
it.
Yeah, I've used Amazon Basics, and it damn near wrecked my Capricorn tubing. Now that was on the PLA. I do have another sealed box of blue in the other room that I don't know. I'm saving it for a rainy day for if I'm desperate, but I was not happy with it. It was clogging, and maybe they fixed their manufacturing since then. But to be honest, there are cheaper brands on Amazon than Amazon's that are better.
Gotcha. All right. So I think that takes some of our questions now. I think we've got everything. As far as questions go, again, if
Yep.
you're using something like CR10 or CR10S or CR10 Pro, I personally would rather go to mirrors on there, and I think it works just fine as a build surface. And then we are testing a new product. You guys are going to see that on Tuesday, and then we'll get back into building our Prusa custom build. But this new product, just to give you guys a heads up, is called Dust and Print. And we did put it on some glass. We put it on the Ender 3. It says it's good for 80 prints before you have to revitalize it or clean it off and put on a new slurry. I will be showing you guys all about that. So it's an alternative to glue stick, and we're going to check it out on Tuesday's show.
And the reason I brought up this whole topic about PET G sticking, I used my sample of Dust and Print, and it
Ah,
stuck. And as soon as it cooled down, it fell right off the bed. I honestly, I won't lie to you guys, my favorite part about that product is that it changes color. And you'll see.
yes.
That was my favorite part. I was giddy for 10 minutes.
I love the smell of it too. You guys, we're going to talk more about that on Tuesday. We don't want to spoil too much about Tuesday's show because we
No,
want you to
but
watch it.
definitely tune in for it because I'm gonna make sure you tune in for it because I'm gonna tell you for me it worked great. So I'm impressed.
There you go.
So yeah.
So, getting back to care of your tools for finishing. When it comes to my paintbrushes, I like to use my paintbrushes for a long period of time. There's two products that I use to make my paintbrushes go further. First is called Brush Cleaner. And anybody who's not using this product, you should go out and get some. What you basically do is you take your brush, and I got a brush sitting right here in water right now. And it's pretty dirty. And all you simply do is take your brush and just work up a lather, just like you would if you were shaving. And get it in there. And that's what you want your brush to look like when it's done. It's going to have a little bit of soap on it. Then you're just going to go ahead and clean it in some clean water. Now, of course, I'm not using clean water. I'm using dirty water. And then...
Well, that's the main thing. Get it right into water, right? Don't let
Yeah.
it dry.
Don't
Even
let
if
it
the
dry
water's
on there.
dirty.
That's right.
Yeah.
So grab yourself some kitchen roll or paper towel, whatever you guys call it. And then you're just going to clean that brush out on the kitchen roll. Get out any excess paint. And there you go. Now you got a nice clean brush. Now, when I'm done with that, I have this other product, which is $9.75 from your local art store. It's called Brush Cleaner and Restorer. I have taken a brush that is rock hard. I've put it in this stuff. Just dipped it in, put it on my paper towel, cleaned it up, and it was back to being like brand new again. This stuff is amazing.
Wow.
It's by Winsor Newton. It's good for acrylic and for oil paints. I don't use oil paints very often. But
Yeah,
with the acrylics,
I think oil's kind of non-standard now, right? Just across the board.
well, it's great if you're doing a lot of weathering. And what
okay.
this stuff will do is it will get out any last remaining bits of paint that may have gotten up into the ferrule or the barrel here. It will help to get any of that old paint out of there. And now you've got a brand new brush again. And there you go.
So just to show what can be done, your 3 models so far, are they 100% airbrushed only?
No.
Okay, so you have gotten into the brushing.
What I will do is I will airbrush my base coat on just to get nice, clean coverage without any, what's the word I'm looking, brush strokes. So once you've got your base coat on, this actually has 2 coats of color on it now. I've got this light on. Let me turn this light off. There we go. You see that better. So there's 2 coats of color on here actually. And you can see little variations in the color of her skin. I don't know how, you can see little pinker areas up there on her collarbone and down between her breasts and on her stomach there. That's the base coat. And then I will dry brush. I will take a little bit of this color again, and I will add just a very little bit of white to it. And I will airbrush, or not airbrush, but dry brush. And what dry brushing is, for anybody that doesn't know, it's where you take your brush, you just dip it into your paint very lightly, and you wipe most of that paint off onto your kitchen roll or whatever you're doing. And then you will take your brush and you will dry brush over the highest areas of the model. So what that does is it gives you a variation in the skin tone. Then what I will do after I've done the first dry brush is I will go back, I will really thin that water, or that initial color, that secondary color out. And I will go over and I will do a very, very thin wash. Almost so thin that there's very little paint in the wash mix. And I will use either airbrush thinner or I will use just a little bit of water and a little drop of the Flow Aid. And then I do a very, very thin wash. Like there's very little pigment inside that paint when I'm washing it on. And what it does, it just kind of evens out the texture so that you're not getting a lot of bumpy texture from dry brushing, which you can get, especially on 3D printed models. And then, now you've got a nice base to start working on. So from here, I will start to add my shadows, my highlights. I will add some more colors to the skin. I'll do some flicking. And if anybody who doesn't know what flicking is, it's where you take a brush, you have very watered down thin paint, and you just flick that onto your model. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I do an episode on flicking. And when I'm going to do my skin tones and texture, I use FW inks for that. Because these are incredibly thin, and you can thin them out really, really nice. And it will give you all those variations in skin. Now, what a lot of people will do, a lot of people will say, hey, that's great. That looks awesome. It's ready to go. To me, that's only stage 2. Wow. There's probably on Luke, let's look at him real quick. Demon Luke. Now, Luke has a lot more color in him, and you can see there's color in his cheeks, there's color in his lips, in his nose, down on his chin, underneath where his Adam's apple is. You can see that there's lots of variations in the skin tone. I don't know how well the camera's picking that up, but you can see, I know from looking at it right here that there's a lot of variation in the skin tone. Now, this particular model, even though it was cleaned up and sanded, it really has a lot of texture to it, because for anybody that doesn't know, Mark Hamill, the actor who played Luke Skywalker, was in a very bad car accident between the filmings of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So his face is very scarred. If you've ever seen the man in public, he wears that big beard because he's hiding a lot of scarring on his face. But the
wasn't
artist,
it that whole scene in Empire was to with him fighting the Beast was to explain the scars, basically, to cover it up a bit?
Yes, you're out of focus, Brian.
Oh, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong focus. It's supposed to be hitting my other camera's focus, and that's what happens. It's like, whoa! Because what I was going to show you guys, I was going to try and get up a macro close-up of my model here to see that like even the hair on this model has a lot of texture.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a very detailed model. I was really impressed.
Now, when we get into something like Wonder Woman over here, who I've got sitting back here, if I can get her out. So Wonder Woman just basically has 2 coats of paint on her now. And we will get into doing more highlights, and we'll put in a little bit more pinks on her cheeks, on her lips. We'll do a little smoky eye for her, and eventually we will get her all done, and she will be at the Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo.
I don't suppose you have any of your finished models around the shop there, do you?
No, because every time I finish a model, somebody wants it. So I never have any at home.
So I guess you guys are all going to join us on the adventure of actually seeing something completed here.
Yes, you are. Last year, for anybody that remembers, I painted up the Hulk on the show, and I just got the Hulk painted. It was one of Malix3design.com's Hulk models, and I just gotten the Hulk painted, and it sat in the shop on the shelf for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks before Calgary Expo. And we took it to Calgary Expo just to show off what you could do with your 3D prints. And somebody wanted it so badly that they offered me a ridiculous amount of money. So I said, okay, I can always print and paint another one.
You have yet to, but you
could. I have yet to, but I could. Hey,
that's
Ken
the tale
Jensen.
of our life. Eric's asking, are these models PLA printed on what? So
these are all PLA models, printed on the CR10S for the most part. Some parts are printed on the Ender 3. Some parts are printed on the SX4 by Mamarubot. And that's mainly just the bases, because I've got a couple of really big bases.
For small details, we don't use any particular printer. It's just the bigger they go, the bigger we have to move up on a printer.
Now, I like the Creality printers for how they print, because I've gotten it down to a science now where I can print the Creality, or I can print any model, and I've got very little sanding to do on it initially, because of how I understand the layer heights now. And not a lot of people do understand the layer heights like that. And for anybody that doesn't know, that's a Creality printer user, your magic number is 0.04. What I mean by that is that every layer height is going to be a multiple of 0.04. So when you want, say, a fine print, normally you would put it at 0.1 in your slicer. And 0.1, what that does is, because it's not a multiple of that 0.4, is you will get the odd third or every fourth layer that is either too much or too little material. So you'll either have a little bit of a bump out for that layer, or you'll have something that looks like it was under extruded a little bit. So if you want to
coin the term microstep drift, because that's really what it is.
It's really what it is.
It's a drift.
So if you and your slicer do 0.04 as extra fine, 0.08 as fine, 0.0 or 0.12 as good, 0.16, 0.2,
0.24, etc., etc.
etc., etc. Those are your multiples. Once you get up to 0.28 or 0.32, then you're really into very quick print, and your layers will still come out much nicer than if you use the standard layer heights that are in your slicer.
If you're not sure, just slice at 1.16. Just trust me. 1.6 is great. 1.2, you don't even see the layer lines. Anything lower than that, you're going for ultra precise.
Yeah, exactly. What slicer, and did you post your profiles on the Facebook group? 3DPA is asking. No, we did not post those on the group, for probably two reasons. And the first is that the reason I don't post profiles is because everybody has a little bit of a different situation. I print my prints at 210, 220 sometimes. My bed is always 60. Depending on the environment that you're in, you may drop that, depending on the material you're using as well, from whatever manufacturer. You may drop that to 200, 190, 195, and your bed may be as low as 40 or no heat on your bed at all. So by giving you guys the little tips of, with Creality, for instance, because it's using a 8mm lead rod, and that's that lead screw that goes up and down on your Z-axis. The math works out. If you want more information about how that math works, Chuck over at Shep on YouTube, Shep 3D or something along that line, SHEP, he figured out what the magic number was. So I got to give him all the credit. It's not something that I figured out on my own. It's something that he figured out, and I just applied the math. And with Creality, it's 0.04 because they use an 8mm lead screw. So that works out, and you get the best layers at 0.04, 0.08, 0.12, and so on.
So, hey, you know what? Let's have a little fun education lesson here, all right?
Okay.
This is going to be some boring math. I'm going to bring up the Windows calculator here, and I'll show you guys how to figure out your lead screw or your magic steps per millimeter. So let's see if I can pull this up. This has been a while since I actually did this calculation, so bear with me.
Okay. I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to give you the whole screen.
Whoa. Okay, so we got this really fancy high-end Windows calculator here. I think I've lost your mic there, Rich, so I'm going to assume everyone can still hear me. But basically, you've got the steps per millimeter on your slicer. Let me see if I can even load up Visual Studio Code and show you your vertical steps per millimeter there. Here's my config H for the Ender 3 Dual. And I'm sure I'm going to see the chat numbers drop here because, yeah, Brian's giving a science lesson again. This is what happens every time I do this. Where are we here? Where's our steps per unit? Okay. So we can see here that we have default axis steps per unit of 400. So what that means is your Z motor is going to rotate 400 times on full steps to get you a full rotation. Or sorry, this is for 1 millimeter. I'm sorry, to get you 1 millimeter of height. So what we do is we take this number, and I'm a bit rusty on this. If we take it 1 divided by 400, oh, I'm in the programmer view. That's no good for you guys. Let's go scientific. 1 divided by 400. This gets us a layer, a height of 0.0025 steps or millimeters per step. So for a while, I thought this might be a magic number for a lot of people, but the reason it doesn't make any sense is because this takes microstepping into account. So if you want to use your ideal magic number, which is a full step and not a microstep, you multiply it by your microstep number, which for 95% of the people out there is 16. Once you've done that, there's your magical layer height. So if we then determine that your printer has 800 steps per millimeter, which I've seen them a lot. It's dependent on the 1.8 degrees per step versus the 0.9 degrees per step that's defined on your motor. If we clear all that and flush out everything here, 1 divided by 800 is going to get you another layer height. And if you times that by 16, your effective magic number is 0.02 millimeters. So any multiple of that is going to get you a nice clean layer. So the reason a lot of people brought up issues with these magic layers prior was they were buying monoprice units and other American 3D printers where the lead screw is imperial and not metric. So this calculation is giving us the metric one. You're going to have to figure out your magic numbers for your lead screw in imperial and convert to metric. So I believe the monoprice one was 0.13125 something or other. It's a terrible number. You can look it up online for a lot of those American models. But there is your quick crash course. So simply your steps per unit in your in your firmware, go 1 divided by that number and then multiply it by 16. Or if you're using a special stepper that has, say, 32 microsteps, you multiply that by 32.
Now,
nice
the other
simple
thing that you want to keep in mind is the lead screw itself. Lead screws come in different leads. They come in 8 mil leads, they come in 4 mil leads, they come in 2, and they also come in 1 mil leads. So typically what you're going to find is most 3D printer manufacturers use an 8 mil lead. Some use a 4 mil lead. So those are the two most common.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is under the presumption that you already know your lead screw size and everything, and I'm cheating just by grabbing it straight from my firmware config from what is running. So all the Creality printers are 400. I can't vouch for any of the other manufacturers, unfortunately, because I don't do a lot of other 3D programming outside of an 8 mil screw. But if you do have a different number there, as I said, that formula is that simple to find your magic number.
And there you go.
So there's your boring Brian lesson for the night. Sorry, guys.
The Minty Angel. Ha 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 ha. Your mom gay.
Don't you love trolls?
I love trolls. Trolls are always fun. Rover, do your job. Rover's still here with us, so.
Brandon Fain, I prefer the term optimized layer height. Yeah, that is the correct term, but good luck changing an entire industry.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to give a shout out to Rover, who is here usually every Saturday moderating our chat for us, and he does a great job of that, and we want to thank Rover for all the stuff that he does for us. There we go. Now, Julie says, fascinating, not boring. See, I always leave the math to Brian. I don't do the math.
Well, it only took another YouTube channel to convince him the numbers was right, not my mathematics. I'm just the crazy guy who comes in and be like, numbers, use the damn numbers. That's how it goes usually.
Yeah, usually. So now that you know that, it'll make printing your next print so much easier. And you'll get a much better result.
Absolutely. A lot of people, I mean, if you're printing at 0.2, that's going to be a pretty common solid optimized number for every printer. It's when you start going lower or upper that you're going to start seeing those deviances and think, oh, maybe my printer can't print at that height. No, you can go down to 0.04 millimeter layer height if you really want to. That's where that like 40, 50 micron number from all these manufacturers is coming from. The resolution, they just don't know how to calculate it properly.
Now, Brian says, with a lack of QC control and cheap manufacturing of these printers or these parts, there goes your magic number. No, not necessarily. As long as you know what the lead screw is, you're fine. You'll be able to figure that out and still get a good print.
Now, if your lead screw is bent, which is going to cause you a lot of other issues, then yeah, it's going to transfer onto those magic numbers there. But let's put it this way. I mean, if the numbers were that off, then your cube wouldn't measure 20 by 20 by 20. Your cube would be 20 by 20 by 21 or something. It's actually for the sake of hobbyists, it's extremely accurate. Now, I'm coming from an industrial manufacturing world, and we've dealt with 3D printers that get down to 10 micron and all that. But for consumer grade stuff, I highly doubt you're going to need that level of accuracy.
Now, Julie's asking, since we're building a Prusa clone, what's the optimized layer height for that one? Okay. Now, experience a little stuttering here. I apologize. Let's see if we can get through this.
Are you going to pull up your firmware?
No, actually, it's really simple. Because I'm using an 8mm lead screw, it's 0.04.
Yeah.
Choose
YouTube magic.
YouTube magic. So we are going